Okay, here are the notes for lessons 1-8, the coordinate planes. Essentially, there's going to be two formulas in this lesson. There is one called the distance formula and one called the midpoint formula. Basically, we are going to be on graph paper. You're going to have 2 points. They will have, I'm just making up numbers here. Let's say this is 2, 5, and let's call this 5, -1. And you should be able, based on these 2 points, you should be able to figure out how far it is, the distance between these 2 points, and you should be able to figure out where the middle is between these 2 points. And so first, here is the distance formula. I'll put D for distance. It is going to look like this. It will equal the square root. So the distance between the 2 points is the square root. Then in parentheses, x2 minus x1, close the parentheses, squared, plus y2 minus y1 squared. And when you have this 2x2, x1, that is just distinguishing between the 2 points. Okay, don't square anything because you see a 2 here. Now that does mean square. The midpoint formula, exactly where would this middle be? It's going to end up being a point. It's not going to be, how many inches or what's the distance. It'll be an exact point. So it's actually going to end up in parentheses like all the other points. You're going to take the x values, x1 plus x2, or just add the 2 x's and then divide by 2, comma, add the 2 y's, y2 plus y1 divided by 2. Whenever you add 2 numbers and divide by 2, that's kind of like figuring out the average. So this is figuring out the average left to right, and when you add the y's and divide by 2, it figures out the average going up and down, and that's where you get the midpoint. Of course, average means midpoint. Okay, I'm going to first go with number 2. I'm going to skip number 1 for just a second here. Number 2 is a little bit easier, so let's do this. Find the coordinates of midpoint x, y. X is 2, -5, and y is 6, 13. So I don't have graph paper here, but this will be the point x, and then if we had graph paper, the other one would be somewhere here. This will be point y, and this is 6, 13. Now if I had graph paper, maybe I can just look at the graph paper and just go, okay, I know where the middle is. It's right here, and then you would get that location. But we are going to actually use a formula to give me that location, okay, since we don't have graph paper here. So the midpoint is this formula from up above. It's going to be take the x values and add them, divided by 2, comma, take the y values, add them, divided by 2. And that will give you average of left to right. How far is the average left to right? And then how far is the average up and down? The x values, there's a 2 plus 6 divided by 2, comma, the y values, there's -5 plus 13 divided by 2. Well, this is 2 plus 2, which is 8, divided by 2, which of course is 4. This is -5 plus 13, that's 8, divided by 2, which is 4. So it happens to be 4 over 4 up. That would be the midpoint. If I had graph paper, you would be able to see that. That would fit right in the middle, 4, 4. All right, let's go back to number 1 here. Let me see if I can get it on the screen. It says, using the map. Now the map here, obviously you can tell it's on an XY grid chart here. Here's the x-axis. Let me kind of highlight a little bit. Here's the y-axis. And we're going to find the distance between 2 cities here. City Elm and City Symphony. So here's Elm, here's Symphony. So what we want to do is, on graph paper, we got to figure out how many spaces is it from here to here. Okay, this is 1 unit, this is 1 unit, but we can't count because it's at a slant. So we want to just figure out the distance using the distance formula. First, let's get the location points for Elm and for Symphony. Elm, if I use my graph paper right here, 0, 0, this is -3 over, -6 down, -3, -6. Whoops, excuse that. Symphony is 1 over, 2 up, 1, 2. All right, my pen is running out of juice here. So the new formula, distance formula, it's right here above. The distance between the 2 points, or the 2 cities, is going to be the square root. And you're going to really know this formula by the end of the year. x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And what we have here are 4 unknowns, and there are 4 numbers here, 1, 2, 3, 4. You got to put these 4 digits into the correct spots. So Elm, every point location is X, then followed by Y. X, then followed by Y. Well, if Elm is the first point, I'll just put an X1, Y1, and Symphony is point 2, so X2, Y2. Okay. The 2 does not mean to square it, it's just to distinguish which one goes where. So these 4 numbers are going to go into this magical formula, which you're going to need to eventually know in your head. X2 is 1 minus the X1, which is -3. We'll square that result after we add it. Then we'll go Y2, which is 2, minus, the formula has a minus, and then you put it next to -6. So you sometimes are minusing a negative, and so 1 minus a negative, this is like adding. 1 plus 3 is 4, we'll square that. 2 minus a negative is like adding, so that's 8, and we'll square that. 4 times 4 is 16. 8 times 8 is 64. And then 16 plus 64 is 80. And then we're going to need to go to the calculator. What's the square root of 80? What number times itself is 80? It's approximately, it's very close to 9, because the square root of 81 is 9, and that's close to 81. But this is 8.94. So from Elm to Symphony, now each one of these units, I mean, there would be 8.94 of these tick marks if I could physically make the same distance here to here. But there would be 8.94 of those. And that is, we'll just call this units. It could be miles, it could be feet, who knows. But we'll go 8.9 units, the distance between the 2 point locations.